This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tonya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward, and welcome to the discussion of Shane's idea of improving company culture.
It's always about being on the edge of either embarrassing people or getting people out of their comfort zone. There's this thing that I've always wanted to do, and I can't get my family to do it with me. It's this idea that you can't speak for a day unless you are speaking in song. So you have to sing your conversations. And I just think this would be the coolest thing ever. Obviously, people would be super embarrassed. I just think this would be fantastic. It would definitely be fun to do for the staff, for your people. How do you have a negative attitude doing something like that? Is it possible to sing and not be happy?
When you brought this idea up, this idea reminds me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I know I'm dating myself because I was a huge Buffy fan, but there is an episode in season 6. It's called Once More with Feeling. And if you are a fan of Buffy, you know that is the musical episode where no one has conversations. Everyone is singing. And then you have Allison Hannigan, who can't sing. And it was like a really funny thing because everybody else is having all of their conversations about singing, and she basically didn't say much or sing much through the whole thing because she's so uncomfortable with her singing. This is the one way you could get me to be really quiet for an entire day.
The funny thing is I'm not a musical guy, movie musical. Grew up, I've got girls in the age of High School Musical, so I know every song of High School Musical. I'm a dad, I'm not in that scenario, but I don't like musicals. I just want to be clear that it doesn't mean that you have to be this huge musicals fan or anything like that. I just think it's one of those things that gets us out of our comfort zone. And we talk about stuff like that all the time. How do we keep our energy up? How do we have a positive attitude every day? Because our people need us to have a positive attitude. Come on. What would make you happier than just singing your conversation? Just think about it. Hello, Tonya. How are you today? How silly would that be? And have you seen what happened to Microsoft and CrowdStrike? And you just have to do that. And you just have to make yourself uncomfortable. That's the humility of just what this would do. And it would just be fun. Maybe we're doing it at an all-staff meeting.
Thinking through our staff, and there are going to be members of our team that are totally going to embrace this. And then there are going to be members of our team that call in sick that day.
They're not going to know. We're not announcing it. It's going to be a surprise. I don't know if they have the guts to do it, but maybe I will.
I'm trying to think of the excuses that will come up of the reasons that you can't do this. Like just that in and of itself is going to be entertaining.
I have a scratchy throat. I have a cold. I can't do that. I don't know what to say. I can't sing. There's so many things.
Okay, so Integrous Company Culture Building Exercise. We will see what happens when Shane decides to do this, and we will give you an update on the podcast after it happens.
Instead of seize the day, we'll call it sing the day. How about that?
Sing the day. There we go. Well, look forward to the Sing the Day episode that will come out this fall. It was a good teaser. I'm proud of you.
Everybody's going to quit. We're not. We're going to be hiring sometime this fall after 50% of our employees decide to resign.
I can usually make a transition into our podcast topic, but I'm really struggling with this. So let's just go into it. Maybe it's excuses. Who knows? Our actual business topic for today is your name being on the door. What does that mean? So let's start with, should your name be on the door of your business or not as the business owner?
We have some history here, and for context, there's been a migration over time of where we started to where we are. And for context and a little bit of background, in the beginning of the Integra Partner Program, most of our agents came from the exclusive side of the business, the Liberty Mutuals, the Nationwides before they went independent, the Farmers, the Allstates, all of those exclusive agent companies. Most of our agents came from prior careers at those companies, okay, just to set the stage there. And in most of those situations, if you look around the country, you recognize that it's Bob Smith, agent, Allstate, Bob Smith, agent, Farmers, etc. There is this context that when they are going to become an independent agency, it's what were they used to, what resonated with them. And we came up with a concept to help them blend their comfort of their past and their experiences with their movement forward into the independent agency space. And they partnered with us to start their new independent agency, and they went to market with that concept. And so we had this co-branded DBA concept that was, if it was Bob Smith, the concept was Bob Smith Integra or Smith Integra. It was something with their name, and it was about their personal brand. It was about them as the expert. And I still have some opinions there that if you're going to be personal lines, small commercial, solopreneur, 2 to 5 employees, 3 to 5 million in premium, mostly personal lines insurance, what I would call a practitioner approach, which is a fantastic business model, by the way. I say that over and over again. It is a well above average living. It is a flexible business model. It is a lifestyle business model. And you are the expert. So your name being on the door makes a lot of sense because you are basically running an insurance practice, no different than a CPA practice or a law practice. And so it follows that model. And over time, that process to some degree has been sunset. It has been sunset from a branding standpoint because we eventually went into this area of, well, you can opt out of that because later on in the program's life, I would say after about 10 years or so, we started having a lot of agents come at us and prospects come to us who wanted to be what I would call a generic brand. They wanted to not be their personal brand. They wanted to have something that 100% reliant on them in case they were sold. There was all kinds of explanations for why they wanted to create a brand that was something other than their name. We started having an opt-out option. And then eventually we said a couple of years ago, you know what? We're just not even doing it. We're not even bringing that brand to the table because it had shifted. Generational shifts had happened. 80% of the agents were opting out anyway. So there's this sort of historic context of us as an organization having started out as your name should be on the door to make a decision and do whatever you want to do. And that's been this evolution of the Integra Partner Program through the last 14 years.
The situation that inspired this topic came about 2 weeks ago. We were doing a video call with our summer intern, the fabulous Olivia Bruno, and our original Integra partners, the Phoenix Insurance out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Justin and Aaron Hoosman. And Justin shared with Olivia his thought of why his name was not on the door. And that was, if something goes wrong, they're going to always insist on talking to the person whose name is on the door. And even if you have fantastic people in leadership positions, it's still not the name on the door. As a growing business, they made that decision.
Here's the irony of this thing. The Hoosman brothers, the Phoenix Insurance, were our second agent in the partner program. Our first agent was a gentleman by the name of Michael Pike, former Farmers agent who has unfortunately passed on. Mike was the first agent that came on board, and then the Hoosman brothers were the second agent.
By the way, when you refer to them as the oldest living Integra agents,
it's funny.
I don't like it very much.
I know. They're going to have to live with it because they are, in terms of not age, but in terms of history with us. Now they are the longest tenured agents in the program.
That's probably a better way to put in our oldest living agents.
Yeah, that's because they're in their 40s now or something like that, or getting close to where I am, and they don't like that. No different than I don't like that, and I get it. They were the polar opposites, Mike and Aaron and Justin, in how they wanted to go about their agencies. and their backgrounds. Mike being a former exclusive agent with a captive company, and Aaron and Justin being producers at an independent agency that wanted to start their own independent agency. So context again here, and understanding background and where people come from also is going to dictate this decision. And I'm going to go ahead and say it, and I'll say it again at the end of the podcast and probably multiple times. I believe the answer to this question is that there is not a right or wrong. It's a decision, okay? And it's a decision based on what you want as an agent and what you want your agency to be. And so the Huesman brothers, and their context is they wanted to build a brand, and they've built a fantastic brand, and they didn't want this idea of a practice. They didn't want to be the only thing in place and people that the customer wanted to talk to. And I would say there's been an attempt over the last decade on my part that Integra isn't just Shane Tatum, that I've been working really hard starting about 15 years ago to create it, to evolve and create a brand, an agency organization brand that isn't directly tied to me. There are a lot of reasons for why that needs to happen that way. Number one, I'm not running an insurance practice, okay? I'm running an insurance organization that has both a retail direct-to-consumer option and then both an agency network. And so we have a lot of stuff going on, and it's not the Shane Tatum network. It's the Integra Partner Network. And that's something that is really difficult to get done when you're the person out front, when you're the one that people identify with your organization and what your brand is. And sometimes it is what it is. And sometimes you are the brand. And that's where this whole thing came from. When I looked around and we're developing the Integra Partner Network concept, I'm looking around and going, okay, in reality, from a personal line standpoint, for sure, and from just who is successful, who is notably successful, direct, captive, independent, all channels in. It was State Farm agents. At the end of the day, State Farm agents were, on average, more successful than everyone else in terms of personal lines insurance. Outside of the independent agency channel, I'll say within the captive channel. And that's where the door, your name on the door, that's where this got stuck in my brain, is I just have never met a poor State Farm agent. And State Farm agents have been successful financially, have been successful in communities across the country. I think that model is eventually going to run its course, so to speak. I think consumer choice is going to win. I think the independent agent channel is going to win. But if you go back 50 years, you understand where this sort of evolution of brand and you on the door and all of that comes from.
From a marketing perspective, I really do love both. That is one of the most political answers that you're going to hear in a very political season. And I love the personal brand. Putting your name on the door, when you're marketing yourself, when you're going to networking events, there's no confusion. It's not, I'm Shane Tatum with Integra, I am Shane Tatum from Shane Tatum Insurance. So when it comes time to find me, it is easier to find and make that connection. But like you said, if you're trying to build something bigger, or if you have a situation where you want to hire people, where eventually you want to bring on partners, the city that I am from in Northeast Louisiana had a huge independent agency, 2, 3, 4 generation kind of independent agency. And when partners changed, now all of a sudden they're having to rebrand because partners change. That causes a challenge. You're having to spend thousands of dollars because you have a new partner on board, and it's confusing to the consumer. One way or the other, as Shane said, it's not right or wrong, it's right or left. But this is one of those things that you want to sit down and map out. Okay, what do I want my agency to look like realistically? Not pie in the sky, but realistically in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And what does that look like from a fiscal perspective as I grow?
What's really interesting and really one of the things that I've always talked to agents about over the years is there's this perception when you start an independent agency that you need to build it in such a way that it's more valuable if you are not connected to the agency, and things can evolve and perpetuate without you in the terms of selling your agency. And this is something that I believe is misconstrued in the marketplace, because Insurance Journal and Rough Notes and all the periodicals, of course, the big deals, the big names, the private equity backed roll-up organizations, purchasing agencies, their strategies for that, leaving it branded in their community, rebranding it immediately. Different orgs have different strategies. And one of the really big ones, Hub, and another one, Truist, I think is the way you say that. Truist is a bank holding, and it's also got an insurance organization. These are big brands that immediately come in and want to rebrand. So they don't really care if it's you or you spend all this energy on this brand and this money on building this generic brand. They don't really care. They want the revenue. They believe if you're making a 20% profit margin, that they can buy your book and make a 40% profit margin on their economies of scale. And they probably can. At a very minimum, they can probably get to 35. We spend a lot of energy in the small to mid-size realm thinking about something that the eventual purchasing organization cares nothing about. And so I land on this area of you're overthinking it. Where are you? What is your market? And what is going to help you build a business and be the most profitable and create the most value when it comes to your book of business, okay? And does that mean you need to spend all this energy on creating something that doesn't have your name on the door? Or should you create something that does have your name on the door based on where you're at? For instance, if you're in a smaller community, your name on the door may be beneficial. You don't want to necessarily build something that feels foreign or bigger. If you don't feel local, then you're probably missing your customer base.
I'm thinking about if I were starting an independent agency, which way would I go? And it comes down to location for me. If I was going to go back to Louisiana, where I'm from, where I was a radio personality, where I was extremely active in the community, where people would actually recognize my voice at the grocery store, which I think about that now and is crazy. There's no way I would not open Tonya Lead Integra. That would be what it is because of the name recognition that I have in the town that I grew up in. On the flip side of that, living in Pensacola, Florida, I don't have that same name recognition. I've worked in the insurance industry the entire time I've been here. I don't have the same community presence. So I would probably go with something a little more generic, Cordova Integra, Panhandle Integra, something like that, that would feel more locally inclusive, since I am not locally inclusive, if that makes sense.
If you were to start an agency and you were to call it Pensacola Insurance or Emerald Coast Insurance, if you were to call it something that is geographically referenced to that area, that would be really beneficial, in my opinion, to building that local brand. What we do is we go, oh yeah, but what if I'm in 10 states one day? And what if it doesn't make any sense for me to be Emerald Coast Insurance anymore, and I should be Southeast Insurance or Gulf Coast Insurance or whatever? Well, we are overthinking that, because the reality of it is that most of us, and nobody wants to hear this because nobody wants to wrestle with limitations. We're salespeople, I get it. But just like the chances of making it to becoming a Major League Baseball player and having a Major League Baseball contract, the chances of that are so small. Why are we worrying about that when we're 14? It's a dream. It's just a dream. But when we set into building our brand, the dream may be 10 states, 20 states, national, whatever. But you've got to take those initial steps to be successful where you're at before you can even see the dream come into fruition. I'm not telling you that you can't have the dream. I'm telling you that if you get there, you got enough money to rebrand and you're going to be fine. But why spend the money to try to create a brand for the what if, and you may never get there, and then you just wasted a bunch of money. And when you sell your agency one day and retire, the people that buy it don't care.
I want to go back to what you just said about the dream, too. Your dream in your 20s and your early 30s is probably going to be different than your dream in your 40s and your 50s. You don't want to hear that now, but that's okay. I'm going to say it anyway. And the dreams that I had in my 20s and 30s, let me tell you, now that I'm 40, I'm really happy with where I am. I have seen this happen with agents over the last 7 years. Agents that came on board with us and they had the pie in the sky idea of this is what I'm going to do. And then they get to the spot where they're making a fantastic living. They have a lifestyle that they want. They're being able to go to every ball game. They're being able to spend time with their spouse. They're able to go on vacation, work from vacay, be able to do all of the things. And they decide that, okay, that dream is not worth giving up the lifestyle that I have created for myself. It's not that their agencies stagnate. Their agencies are still growing, but they don't want to be global. They want to be super successful locally and regionally because they love the lifestyle that creates.
People get frustrated with me at times when I talk about this building an insurance practice or this solopreneur thing, but I have experiences with people who are doing it, have done it, who are there. And when they got to the point of, I need to hire someone, they intentionally made a decision around, I don't think I'm going to hire anybody, or I think I'm going to hire a VA instead of hiring a full-time person. I'm going to hire somebody to help me be better in my practice. When you're sitting there, and we have multiple cases of people with either no employees or a VA up to people with 2 or 3 employees plus themselves making anywhere from $350,000 a year to $500,000 a year worth of income pre-tax. And it's an incredible lifestyle. To Tonya's point, it's flexible. And they've reached a point where they either don't want to hire more people or they don't want to hire people at all. They don't want that headache, responsibility, whatever category you want to put that into. They don't want to have to create procedures, policies to bring people in to do things that they can do. They're okay with the workload. They don't mind the working vacation in the sense that they work a couple of hours a day to just make sure everything's okay, and then they go and they do their thing. They don't mind the on-call for emergency. I am not saying you have to do that. But to Tonya's point, you start out with this idea and you spend all this energy trying to build something to avoid being a practitioner. Then you get there and you're making money and you realize, I'm pretty happy. I really like what I'm doing. I really like how it's working. And then everything changes and you decide you don't want to build. The dream has changed. You're living the dream. And look, I'm not taking anything away from the enterprise builders. I put people in really 2 categories: building an insurance practice and building an insurance enterprise. And there are people within our organization who are building an enterprise. And you know what? They're successful and that's great and they're doing it. I'm cheering them on. But I'm equally cheering on that agent building an insurance practice because it really is a choice. It is not a you're doing it wrong, or if you do it this way, it's better. And I feel like that's my frustration with some of the insurance podcasts out there, producer-driven type podcast and sales-driven type podcasts. They're basically saying, for the most part, there's only one way to do this, and it's as big and bad as you can make it. And that is just not true. That's not a true statement when you get down into it and you realize, back to Tonya's point, you started out at 28 and now you're 42, and it's like, I don't want that. I want this thing that I've got, and I want to keep doing this. And wow, okay, then do it. Then don't worry about what other people are doing or what other people are saying. You're supposed to do what you're doing because it's working.
That's hard, by the way, in case you didn't know.
It is hard. It is hard because we're live in a social media society and we live in the comparison society, and it's really hard. Like, I'm not sitting here saying it's easy. I was throwing batting practice to my college athlete softball player the other day, and we were talking about just hitting and talking about taking things from practice to the game, and she can still get frustrated with me, which is normal. And that doesn't mean I'm going to stop coaching you to think that it's easy. I'm not going to do that, but it is hard. This is hard. It's mentally hard to not look out across the spectrum and want what somebody else is portraying, quote, portraying in their life, that we don't even know if it's real. We don't know if it's real. We just know that's what it looks like on social media. I just got back from a week in Florida, down in a little bit further east from Tonya, in a little place called 30A, where we go for a week to be bougie. And some of that down there is not real. Like, it's fun to go and have nice dinners and get away and let all the women in my family love the beach and can sit there for hours and hours. And I can't, but that's okay. And it's great because we both get what we want, but it's some of that area, some of that thing, like up in the Hamptons, like, that's not real. It's real for another category of people, but it's not real for 99% of the world. And so just understand that. Just understand that what somebody's doing across town, or you met at an insurance convention or conference, it doesn't mean you have to do that. It doesn't mean that you should adopt their dream. Stop living their dream. Live your dream.
I just knew you were going to use the phrase. I was waiting for it. The phrase.
Comparison's the thief of joy? Or
well,
no?
that one, but I was going to go with
You do you. It's picking up steam. I'm hearing you do you every day from somewhere. Video.
You do you is the verbal equivalent of a sticky note for Shane.
Yeah. I don't know. It's growing on me. It's just you do you. And I guess I'll adopt it and I'll give in. I'll compromise on this one. And maybe that should be the new IA Forward podcast theme, is you do you.
Oh, goodness. You do you. Figure out what works best for your agency and know that it is not right or wrong. It's right or left. I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Usain Bolt. I work hard and I do good, and I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm not going to let you restrict me.
Attitude's a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
Ready to get the ball rolling with your independent agency? Learn more at IntegraAgent.com. That's IntegraAgent.com. Thank you for joining us on IA Forward. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now, or learn more at IAForward.com.